Well, welcome to the July edition of Texarkana Magazine. I'm Libby White, and I have the privilege of interviewing Congressman Pat Fallon. So, Congressman, let's start with your family.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about where you grew up and what your childhood home was like.
Well, I would say, on the campaign trail, I grew up in a small town just northeast of Dallas called Pittsfield, Massachusetts.
A little far away from
A little bit. And so I sought political asylum in the Republic of Texas, and I escaped the clutches of the People's Republic of Massachusetts. Okay. But we grew up in a rural area. My parents are retired school teachers, and they taught us the value of a hard day's work. And we didn't have a lot of money around, so you really valued a dollar, and you didn't want to waste it. And I think you'd take that same approach going into governance. Because when it's tax dollars, I think you have an even greater fiduciary duty to protect it when it's somebody that entrusts it to you. So growing up was interesting. Again, a rural area. The last Republican congressman from Massachusetts, a fellow named Silvio Conti, was our congressman, and he had a great effect. He would knock on doors. He came to our house when I was 10 years old. That's why I love knocking on doors now. Kind of in tribute to Silvio. God rest his soul. It's been 30 years. But he was a wonderful man.
Well, good. Well, so tell me a little bit about your family.
So when I was growing up, it was me and my two sisters. I'm in the middle. And my parents. They're still married, going on. It's going to be 60 years here in 2023.
Okay.
And then my family now, my wife Susan, we've been married for going to be 17 years. And my two sons, Thomas, who's 14, and Mac, who's 12. Just had a birthday.
Just had a birthday. Yeah. How about that? What is your favorite childhood memory?
That's a great question. I'd have to say it was when I was very young. My uncle worked in a deaf school, and it had been one of those beautiful summer cottages that was donated to charity, and so it became a school for the deaf. And he was the principal. And in the summers, he would get use of it for 2 weeks. And one of those weeks, he would invite his brothers. So it was my uncle and three boys, my father being one of his brothers, and all the cousins would come. And cousins are like your friends that you're related to.
But you have to be. It's nice too, right? Yeah.
You're stuck with them for life.
You're stuck with them.
But that was really neat to see. It's just kind of the joy and that stint. And it was very early memory. I was 3, 4, and 5 years old. And in a place that expansive, you remember as just being gigantic too. But it was right on a lake, and those were special times.
What is one of your favorite family traditions?
Anytime we get together now, like for Thanksgiving or New Year's, so I'm half Irish, half Italian, or Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. So my mom's Italian; she's 5 foot tall, and my dad towers over her at 6'2", and actually he says he used to be 6'2". He's about 6 feet now because he's 86 years old. But my mother makes the meatballs and the pasta and the homemade pasta. So she makes the sauce, she gets the paste. Sometimes she grows the tomatoes and she puts them in there as well.
Wow. They
simmer all day with a little wine and a little olive oil, some garlic, some peppers, and some onions, some mushrooms. And she just lets it baste. And then she gets the meatballs, and she's got to get the Italian breadcrumbs, and she gets the right kind of ground sirloin. And they're just absolutely delicious. And when we were kids, she would make the homemade pasta. So she had this little pasta machine, and it would roll like this, and then you'd have to put your hand out, and she'd put them all the little strings, and then you'd hang them all over the house until they dried, and then you'd get them and they boil them. So we don't do the pasta like that anymore.
Okay.
Pasta out of a box.
Yeah.
But she still does the meatballs great.
Did you learn how to cook from her?
I did, yes.
Do you cook for your wife?
I do. I solely cook, and my wife cleans.
What's your
That's
specialty?
All right, so I got a pepper jack chicken parm.
Okay.
Sometimes we auction it off for like charities and things. And I do the yellow, red, and orange peppers, dice them up nice and small. And I do the mushrooms. And then I do that in the chopper, And I do the same thing with the onions, get it small in the little bricks and pop it up. And then there's, it's called Pillars. There's a salami that's really hot. You get it at Central Market in Plano.
Okay.
I got to drive quite a ways to get there. But I chop that up too because it adds a little something to the sauce. And I like the Rinaldi sauce if I can find it.
Okay.
If not, quite frankly, I go to the ragu.
Okay.
And then I take the chicken breast and I pound it, and then I dip it in flour. And you got to this is the secret. You take the flour and you got to get that excess off, and then you put it in the egg and you got to get all the excess off. If you don't, it'll slide out. It's like a soup coat. It'll just come right off. But if not, it stays on there. And then you put in the Italian breadcrumbs from Progresso. That's a little plug, but it's good. And then I deep fry them. And then when they're nice and hot and they come out golden brown, and because they're thin, so they cook pretty quickly. Then you put that pepper jack cheese on. But then I take, while I'm doing that, it's all kind of synchronously. Then I got the meat going, right? So you got 1.5 pounds of ground sirloin and then 1 pound of Italian hot bulk sausage, and you mix that up together. And then you put all the mushrooms and the peppers and the onions in that, and then put that on the pepper jack cheese on a bed of Italian imported pasta. I like the angel hair, the thin. And then you put the oregano on top.
Oh my, well, that's much better than my best meal, which is a box of mac and cheese. Yeah. So
I came in kind of hungry. Now I'm actually being
I'm getting hungry here.
Self-induced.
That's for sure. Do you think your sons will follow in your political path?
It's a great question. Because some people are just what I call afflicted with an interest in politics. And the younger one seems to be far more political. In fact, before he turned 12, he would always talk politics to his friends. He was trying to convert ones that didn't seem to be as conservative as he wanted to be. And I said, Mac, you're 11 years old. Be an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
Go play wiffle ball.
Yeah.
Go play basketball. Don't worry about it. I got the political thing for a while. So, but he's already, I like to tell people, you should vaccinate your children ideologically before they go to a 4-year college so they can be level-headed. They can still love America when they come out and graduate. And so my youngest, I don't have to worry about him. He's right of it till the hunt as it is. I've got to soften him up a little bit. The 14-year-old, we're working on it. He's doing great. Yeah, he's very pro-life. It's interesting. Yeah. I didn't guide them in any way or any particular interest. For my youngest, my oldest, my 14-year-old, abortion just horrifies him. The whole fact that why would you want to kill a baby? So it's interesting. He found this all on his own and researched it. So that's his passionate subject and topic.
Well, what do you see as your greatest challenge as a parent?
To instill in them the confidence that in their abilities, so that they'll live their lives to their fullest potential. Because I always say, anytime I'm on the stump, and particularly when I'm talking to younger people, you're going to fail in life. I'm going to say, let me save you some of the suspense. Not everything that you want to have happen in your life will, but some of it will, provided that you try. And don't be discouraged at the first roadblock or the first obstacle. You're going to have to overcome them. And I said, look at anybody that has wild success, whether it's in business, entertainment, sports, politics. Most people failed the first time or several times. I think of the Graduate, that's kind of a classic movie. Right. Admittedly, never watched it, but Dustin Hoffman, that whole thing. The person that wrote it and shopped the movie around, I think they 26 studios said no, but the 27th said yes. So that's a lot of perseverance that it takes. And I want to instill that in them. And they choose the career that they want, and they choose the path that they want. We'll always be there to support them, but they have to do that on their own and make those decisions. So not only for my kids, but any young people, I do think we live in the greatest country history's ever known. I truly believe that in my heart. And there's bounties and there's blessings. So if you want to honor the people that went before you, and our ancestors paid a heavy price and sacrificed quite a bit for us to be where we are now and when we are. Right. It's not only the United States, but to be in the United States in 2021. Right. I don't know if I'd want to be here in 1795. It was a rough life back then. So we're very fortunate. We're very blessed. We are. Were there any key mentors in your life? No, absolutely. Yeah. Your parents. And then there was some neighbors, some of my friends' fathers were also very instrumental. And of course, Lou Holtz, who was our coach at Notre Dame that I played under. He's been a dear friend and mentor to this day. In fact, I just saw him a few weeks ago. But what he taught us, he said, I know that most people see me as a football coach. I see myself as a teacher and a teacher of young men. And I want to mold you. But he was really good. And then some of the other guys I played with, because you see their work ethic. And you see somebody that, we were so loaded with talent, that there was a fellow named Dorsey Levens, which many folks will remember, was a great Green Bay Packer. I think he rushed for like 10,000 yards in the NFL, so a fabulous career. He was our 4th string tailback at Notre Dame. He had to transfer to Georgia Tech to get playing time because he was playing behind Jerome Bettis, who's a Hall of Famer, Ricky Waters, who should be in the Hall of Fame, and hope Ricky is someday. And it was just a wonderful experience to see those guys grow, and particularly like a Ricky Waters, who had such a work ethic and strong. He had a vision, and he had a dream, and that was he wanted to be a great NFL player. But a lot of people want that. Right. But will you work for that? And he did. And now, while I wasn't as talented as those gentlemen in football, I really took that after football was over, and I said, I got to apply this to my life. Yeah. And I have to seize these opportunities. So I think it's a lot of getting outside your comfort zone. And it's not comfortable to speak in front of people. It's certainly not comfortable to run for office when they're going to look at everything in your past and say, he jaywalked when he was 16.
Right.
There's questions about his criminal past, stuff like that they take out of context. But nonetheless, it's always healthy to do that. And anytime, like I was just on Neil Cavuto today on Fox national TV with 2 million people watching with a couple hours notice. That was outside my comfort zone. But of course I said yes, because we want to talk about the messaging and we want to remind people how great this country is.
Absolutely. Did you always know you wanted to be a politician or be in
No.
politics?
When I was in 4th grade, I was fascinated with the geopolitical aspects of the war, just the interrelations amongst nation states. I was 9 years old. It's an odd thing for a 9-year-old to be interested in. I was a Cold War kid. So, first of all, you don't think the Cold War is ever going to end. Evil Soviet bear will be there forever. And they got their thumb on Eastern Europe and several other countries. But it did end while I was in college, which was remarkable. So I wanted to go into the military because I just felt that you should pay the debt that you owe to this country. And my father was in the Army and then in the Coast Guard later. So I wanted to follow in his footsteps as well. But he did tell me, Libby,
Yes.
don't go in the Army.
And you went in the Army?
No, I went in the Air Force.
Okay, good.
He said, any son of mine, any son of mine's going to be in the Air Force. I was like 10 years old. I go, Dad, why? He said, because I was in the Army in the late 50s, and I was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And I'm crawling in the mud, and it's freezing cold, and I'm sleeping with 200 dudes, in the forest for 2 weeks on bivouac. And I'm doing that, and they're shooting rounds over our heads with barbed wire, and I hear... And he sees an airplane. He didn't remember what kind of airplane it was. It was an Air Force plane. And he looked up and he said, and I pictured that pilot up there. Dry, warm, sipping his coffee, talking to his co-pilot about probably the hot dates they had later and the dinners that they were going to have with all the beautiful gals. And I'm sleeping with 200 men in the forest. Any son of mine's going in the Air Force.
And there you go.
And I did.
Well, let's talk about your life before politics, and you had a very successful entrepreneurial career.
I was blessed.
Tell me a little bit about those. Highlight some of the things you're most proud of.
We grew up in a very modest home, and I love the fact now. I didn't like it so much when I was 11 years old. I got a lot of hand-me-downs from cousins and things like that, but we had everything we needed. We didn't have everything we wanted. And there's a big differentiation. Americans, we have enough resources in the world to give everybody, all 8 billion of us, what we need. But we don't have the resources to give everybody what we want. So there's a big distinction there. But it was a modest home. It just recently sold for like $85,000, and that's in the Northeast. So you can imagine it was modest and small. But you start dreaming, and then you say, well, you have to apply yourself, and you have to get an education. And so I just focused on that. And then anyhow, I was in the Air Force. They paid us, as a second lieutenant in the Air Force, I made $18,500 base pay. Not a lot of money then. It wasn't a lot of money now. It wasn't a lot of money then either. But I was in Wichita Falls in Texas. And when they asked me, where would you like to be stationed? Because when you go into the military, they give you what they call a dream sheet. And they would give you 5 choices. I put Texas 5 times. And I got Texas.
Hey.
Remind me to tell you a story about why I stayed. But anyhow, so I did the Texas 5 times. And but I didn't have any, I was just broke. So I had 4 $20 bills. I had $80 to my name. And I said, I got to do something entrepreneurial. And so I started a little t-shirt business on the side after work. And it failed twice. And then the third time it kind of took off. And then after a year or two, I started making more money on the outside than on the inside. And so I did my 4 years and got out. And then, this is just happenstance, a fellow named Rudy Rudiger calls. If you've ever seen the movie Rudy, it's Daniel Rudy Rudiger. He called me out of the blue. Now, he went to Notre Dame. We're 20 years apart in age. But they just had filmed the movie on the Notre Dame campus in South Bend. And the movie was released, it was TriStar Pictures, it was released in October 1993. And he calls me up and says, hey, I hear you do t-shirts. Can you do some t-shirts for me? And I saw the opportunity that was there. I said, explain to me why you need these and who you're selling them to. He said, well, they give me $10,000 a speech. And he said, and then everybody else is selling merchandise. Les Brown, Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar. I just walk away. I just shake hands and I leave. I take some pictures and I go. I think I need to sell stuff. And I said, I think you do too. So I knew what the opportunity was there, far more than shirts. So I said, why don't you do cassette tapes and caps and all sorts of garments? and motivate, like a book. And so anyhow, I became his business manager. And he said, you pay for it all. We'll split the profit 50-50. You do all the work. I'll sign books and I'll sign hats and things and whatever. And so I got to see pretty much every major country in America, in the United States and Canada, in North America, for about almost 2 years. And did pretty well financially for a 25-year-old kid.
Who started with $80?
I had those $80 and I had to borrow a couple dollars from my parents to buy some of the goods for Rudy. But it ended up working out fabulously well. We're dear friends to this day. And then the business grew slowly. But then in 2009, the young kids were wearing shirts that were negative. I mean, kind of shirts from a technical standpoint, they were really nice, the garment. But the printing, it was all negative messaging.
Yeah. And
so we had our brand called Virtus, V-O-R-T-U-S, because it meant courage in Latin, Virtus. Okay. And we just made really hip, edgy looking clothing and designs, but had a positive, patriotic, and proactive message. And the military became one of our biggest clients. We sold 6,000 garments in the first weekend. We would have been happy with 100. It exploded the company from 10 or 15 employees to 100. Wow. And then it was, the rest is history. So
hard work paid off. Perseverance
paid off. It went well, yeah. See, yeah.
And keep trying. Well, we have a T-shirt for you.
No way.
Yes, here in Texarkana, at Texarkana Magazine, we say that everyone is famous in their hometown. So, just for you,
see, this is
back home.
This is a nice garment. It's like a combed cotton, very nice and soft. I'm sure it's pre-shrunk. And check this out, shatterproof. So, very nice.
Congressman, what was your path to Congress?
In 2008, Barack Obama won the White House, and I was so dismayed. I just didn't feel like he was qualified at all. He'd only been in the Senate, really got in the Senate, had a cup of coffee, and then ran for president. So, and I wouldn't have hired him to be our corporate attorney. So I just didn't think he was qualified for the most important job in the world. I was yelling at the TV, and my wife said, you have to do something about this. You have to channel this in some other better way. And I said, what do you want me to do, baby? The next election is not till March of 2010. This was November 2008. She goes, well, you could run for city council. And I said, but because it was a May election. I said, babe, you're pregnant. She goes, by May, the baby will be born, the election will be over, just go ahead and run. So what I did was I wanted to become the candidate that I want to vote for. And I like people that knock on doors, the Silvio Conti thing.
Right.
And there was somebody that was running that was kind of blessed by, for lack of a better term, the establishment. And she was expected to win. There were 2 other folks running and then myself, so there were 4. But I knocked on 1,000 doors and just talked to people, had conversations, wrote them all thank you notes. Call as many of them as I could to follow up. And we ended up winning without a runoff right at the beginning. First round, we got 57.5% of the vote. And when you run for office, by the way, you should say we and us.
It's always a team effort.
Yes, it always is. And not because my wife had to, have the home front. And then my friends had to help me out. And then you have to have donors that, support you financially. But anyhow, I just believe if you campaign, you have to give your supporters and your friends and your family a world-class effort or you're being disloyal to them. So we won the city council race, served on the city council for 3 years. I think we did some great things. It was in the city of Frisco, very fast-growing city. And then after that term was up, I ran for the State House. It was a new district in Denton County. And then I served in the State House for 6 years. Very different experience in city council because you're leaving to go to Austin.
Right.
I mean, you're leaving Texas to go to Austin. Now somebody will say, he doesn't even know. No, I understand Austin is in Texas. It's a joke. But anyway, political satire at its finest. And then I ran, there was a fellow that was an incumbent Republican that I just felt was bad for the brand and not really an effective senator. So I ran against him in the Republican primary and again was warned for the young people at home, there'll be naysayers that say, don't try it. It'll be too hard. It won't work out. You might lose. Follow your gut and try it. So I just said, listen, I'm going to offer the constituents of Senate District 30 a very different path, different vision, different approach, and it's up to them to decide, make a decision. So it was me, the incumbent, and another fellow that ran, and we beat him by 40 percentage points. I think all in, like $4 or $5 million was spent in the race both ways. You got negative TV commercials about you, it's bizarre. But anyhow, we pulled it out, and largely, again, because we would go right to the people.
Right.
And listen. Ask questions and listen. More so, it's more important to listen than it is to talk. And we're doing a lot of talking now, but and then I served in the Senate for 2 years, and then I was perfectly happy. The Texas Senate is a wonderful institution. We get a lot of things done. What a lot of people don't know is 99% of the things that are passed in the Texas Senate have at least some bipartisan support. the Republicans in Texas are the senior partner, no doubt. But we really work together well. We always pass a balanced budget. We have to constitutionally. So it's a successful model, I think, politically. And then John Ratcliffe, dear friend and a great member of Congress, President Trump said, why don't you become my Director of National Intelligence? And the seat was open. And there wasn't going to be a special election, which I would have preferred and probably wouldn't have run in. But it was a selection process where only 154 people were going to decide. And I didn't like that. I thought more people should have have a say on that decision. And then I was also worried, can this person that wins 80 votes defend the seat moving forward? I had proven that I could. I've never lost an election. And I'm also somebody that has a conservative voting record, a proven conservative voting record. I don't have to just tell you what I'll do. You can see what I have done. So I decided to run. My wife and my sons and I had a discussion. Anyway, on August 8th of last year, we got 82 votes and we became the nominee for the party. And then in November, we got hundreds of thousands of votes because they're great Americans live in CD4.
I voted for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, obviously a very smart young lady. But no, and it's been an honor so far, and we're the learning curve again. I'm kind of a professional freshman, and then I've done this now the fourth time in 11 years, where you're learning something new. But it's serving in Congress is a huge honor and privilege, and I'm soaking in every day. It's real work. If you do it the right way, you really are, working your tail off. Yeah. And rightfully so. We just had a town hall today, an in-person town hall in Commerce. We're doing one tonight here, Texarkana, and then we're going to do another one tomorrow in Blossom. We've committed to doing 36 in-person town halls at least on an annual basis. So this is the beginning of that.
Well, what would you like to accomplish here in this 4th district, in these 18 counties? What's one of the main things you want to accomplish?
Well, I wanted to, and I promised that I would try with every fiber of my being to get on the Armed Services Committee because of the depot. Red River Army Depot and what it means to this area. And let's be candid and frank, most of the people in the 18 county district live out west.
Right.
But nonetheless, it was the right thing to do. It's not about getting reelected, it's about doing the right thing. And so I made that promise and I got on the Armed Services Committee, happy to report. And we serve on the Military Personnel Subcommittee and the Cyber Subcommittee, which is obviously increasingly important considering what's happened with the Colonial Pipeline, what's happened just recently with JBS, one of the main, the largest beef and second pork and poultry manufacturer and company in the world. It has 84 locations, 7 in Texas and 2 in this district. So we need to protect our cybersecurity, and we filed a bill to do just that. But in another interview and another day, we can talk about policy. But it's also interpersonal relations. There are 435 people that serve in the U.S. House. 212, or actually it's going to be 213 Republicans and 222 Democrats when it's all said and done. And we need to do everything we can to get to know each other and so we can work together. We do live largely separate lives, Republicans and Democrats, much differently than the House of Representatives and the Senate work in Austin. And we're going to try to change the culture to do better things for the American people. But it's been an interesting journey thus far. Well,
you are a proponent for upgrading Humvees. So
yes.
Tell me about that, what you see needs to be done and how that can be accomplished.
Well, what many people don't know is we've lost 150 military personnel domestically in this country due to rollovers with Humvees. So they're, when they're on terrain that's not nice, flat I-30 highways, they can be dangerous. And 150 lives lost domestically, not even overseas. So there is technology where they can retrofit, and all the existing Humvees, we have about 54,000 in the military. But there are manufacturers and other lobbyists and other interests and other districts that want to purchase 40,000 new Humvees that will already have this technology on there, this anti-rollover stuff. And I'm like, why would you want to buy new ones when you know you're going to phase it out in 2050 and it costs an additional $12.9 billion? So we can literally save the American taxpayer $12.9 billion and give them exactly the same thing, which is Humvees that don't roll over as they do now. So it's much better to retrofit them. So we've got a lot of co-sponsors on this piece of legislation. I've filed it, and we're going to fight for it, and we'll see how it turns out. But and admittedly, a lot of that retrofitting will be done here in
at Red River.
Yeah, at the depot. But it's also the right thing to do. We're going to save the American taxpayer $13 billion. So
Absolutely.
For me, it's a slam dunk.
Absolutely. Well, as I understand, you were at the Capitol on January 6, 2021 this year when it was stormed. So how did your military training kick in at that moment?
It did, yeah. Okay, so it was really bizarre. We're sitting there in the chamber, and because I don't know what it was like for the whole rest of the world, how it was reported, because I've never even to this day seen taped reports of what went on January 6th, because we were in the chamber. So we're in the chamber, we're discussing the finer points of the Constitution and the certification process, and it was a really great and lively and very interesting debate. And then I see that Nancy Pelosi, somebody whispers in her ear and she leaves. That's not out of the ordinary for the presiding officer to leave. She might have had a meeting or something. But then when the Capitol Police Chief got on the microphones, that was odd. And they said, there's been a breach in the Capitol. There are folks that are in the Capitol that shouldn't be in here. We're going to lock this down and we'll just see how things unfold. Mm-hmm. And then it got worse. And then 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, he comes back on and he says, and some of this I didn't share with the public, but other members have.
Right.
Because I thought for security reasons we shouldn't say certain things, but it's already out there. And then he gets on the mic and he says, there is a gas mask underneath every chair. And I looked at some guy who'd been there like 12 years and I said, did you know there were gas masks under there? He goes, wow.
Yeah.
So I'd been there 3 days. And we reached down and sure enough, there's gas masks. We got to rip them out. And some people put them out immediately. I just wanted to have it ready if needed. Because just nobody knew what was going on the other side of the door. Well, then they start evacuating. And I'm doing what I was told and I'm about to evacuate. And I look back and I see very few Capitol police officers. They're frantic. There's not even enough of them to get one on each door because we have so many doors into the chamber. And I felt compelled to help. At the same time, I wanted to go because I'm not a police officer, I'm not armed, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So Tony Gonzalez was there, who's a freshman congressman from the 23rd district on the border in Texas, a Republican. And I said, Tony, let's go. And he's Master Chief, retired Navy. And he just looks at me and he doesn't say anything and he's not leaving. And I go, come on. And so I'm not going to leave him. So I go, all right, I'll stay. So then I stayed. It was Ronnie Jackson, Texas freshman Republican, Tony, myself, and Troy Nels, all Texas freshman Republican. And then one other guy named Mark Wayne Mullins from Oklahoma. But Mark Wayne stayed as well. We didn't know it was on the other side of that door. And then so I see Troy Nels has got this club. I go, where the hell did you get a club? It was a hand sanitizer station that he'd ripped off and put the business end of it up with the nails and he had it this way like a pike, like in Braveheart when they were charging with the cavalry. So I go, that's a great idea. And when you have that much adrenaline, I ran and I ripped it. It came right out, hot knife through butter, and just poof, it comes right off. And then I'm standing with him like this, and then we have our ties on. So I scream to him, "Get your ties off!" Because if you're in a street fight, you don't fight with a tie on. They'll drag it down, they can choke you. So we all took our ties off, put them in our pocket around, and we're ready for a brawl. We're going to defend this chamber because this is the people's house. Mm. You don't just barge in uninvited. Mm-hmm. You come in and there's an orderly way to come in. Mm-hmm. And it's just, we didn't know. The mobs are dangerous because they're brainless and they do silly and dumb things. Mm-hmm. So anyway, they're on there. And just as there was the one gal that got shot, she gets shot right outside the chamber. And I hear all the police say, shots fired, shots fired. And at that exact moment, somebody had taken a flagpole, a little small one, and poked through the glass. And it looked like bullets. I mean, it has a telltale sign of bullets, perfect round holes with glass shards and dust. And Ronnie and I saw that, and we had just been standing there, and I thought, like, they're shooting into the chamber. Mm-hmm. And that's when it was time to go. Mm-hmm. That's when Ronnie and I and the others left, and they took us to an undisclosed location. So it was just frightening. And now I don't think it was an insurrection, and some people in the press get on me about that. Nobody was charged with insurrection, sedition, or treason. They were charged with criminal trespassing, vandalism, and the like. Mm-hmm. It was criminal trespassing, and it was a mob. I don't excuse their actions, and anybody that walked in that day should face justice, and they're going to. But I don't think it was an insurrection. You're going to overthrow the greatest democracy history's ever known with flagpoles and mace? Come on. I don't think it was that plan, and justice will be served. We'll see how these 400 or so trials go. But it was harrowing for sure. You were ready to fight. You're ready. You hired a fighter. We did. We should. I didn't think we were going to have to brawl, but with a hand sanitizer pole. So I went back and my staff, and I told them when I finally got back to my office, it was a delay of about 5 hours, and I told them the whole story. I just told you, and they go, "Boss, get that hand sanitizer. Where would you leave it?" I go, "I left it in the undisclosed location." They go, "Go get it." Yeah. That's history. Absolutely. So I went and got it. It was still there because who the hell wants? I got to tell you a quick side story, funny thing. So Adam Schiff is somebody that I don't agree with politically. He ran the impeachment proceedings, the round one against President Trump. So I know who he is though because I've seen him on television. So we're evacuating in a certain area, and I'm walking next to him, and he sees this guy he doesn't know with a big pole in his hand, or club, and he goes, "What's that?" I said, "It's a club." He said, "What are you going to do with that? You're going to use it?" I said, "If I have to." And he sees my member pin. This is what they give us, and because there's so many of us, they know he knew as a member. And he goes, "Well, how long have you been here?" Because they don't know each other that well, Republicans and Democrats. And I said, 3 days. And he looked at me and he said, "It's not always like this." That was kind of funny.
What a welcoming party for you, right?
It was bizarre. Still to this day, I don't really fully comprehend what the hell happened. But I'm glad that, again, we'll find out a lot more once those trials start. So.
Yeah. Well, Congressman, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This was fun, and I'd love to come back anytime.
Well, and thank you for being a part of our July edition of Texarkana Magazine.
Stay warm. Stay cool.